Welcome to 44 and 1 with GVizzle and Tempest. Like and subscribe, and here we go.
So you were telling me about this guy, Butker.
Butker. Yes. He made a speech at a graduation for a Catholic liberal arts college, and he pissed off a lot of people.
Yeah.
Even the nuns who co-founded the school.
Yeah.
Were
Because they're trying to educate young women, and then he said, stick to your vocation, stay in your lane. And bitches, your vocation is at home being wives.
Could you imagine sitting there? You graduate, you spent 4 years in university, you worked your ass off. You're sitting there hearing from somebody who you probably respect or at least have heard of, because I don't think anybody else did until this all happened. And then he's like, all right, ladies, you had your fun. Now go get pregnant.
Yeah. It's, I don't know if anybody listening or if you have listened to his full speech.
I've read sections of it. Yeah, I know it's 20 minutes long, and I have it. Like, I've read lots of excerpts of it and the opinion pieces about it.
Yeah, because I always find that with anything controversial, no matter what side it's on, I'm like, I'll take it with a pinch of salt because they fucking love twisting things. And so I listened to the full speech this morning, and you'll be pleased to know that actually, for a change, the reporting was spot on, and the man is a prick.
Here's the thing: like, he's entitled to the opinions that he has, right? I don't agree with him, but I'm not going to tell him he can't believe what he believes. But it is, for me, the time and place. You're at a graduation ceremony, and you're talking about abortion, euthanasia, IVF, surrogacy. Embrace your role as a homemaker. Just this is not Thanksgiving with my drunk uncle. Wish us good luck in our future endeavors and call it a day, man. Like that's what no reason to go that far.
No. This is a commencement speech for people who have worked their arse off, like you say, for 3 or 4 years, and it's about them. What he's done is made about himself and his views, and he's trying to indoctrinate people with dogma, and just. He's not even, like, his knowledge of Catholicism was very much that, what you'd expect from hard right Republicans at the moment. Like, not even regular Republicans don't even think what he thinks. It is part of this new wave that I've been seeing where these really hardline religious people are just spreading these ridiculous views that even the right-wing people here would shudder at some of the stuff they say.
Well, then, and it's, so two things. His mom, so you would think if those are his beliefs, it was probably because he was raised that way. But his mom is a medical physicist.
Wow.
And he has put out tweets, or whatever they're called now, about how his mom was so supportive and in support of his mom. Not once did he say she should have stayed in the kitchen where she belonged. His mom was a physicist. And even the nuns who co-founded the school, which tells me people should vet their speakers a little more. They were, what they say? They said his views did not reflect their core values. And he said being a homemaker is the highest calling at a school co-founded by nuns. The highest of callings.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that, well, the people who vetted him, I think, there was like 3 lecturers he mentioned. I think Minas and Swafford and someone else, and they're the ones that sort of co-opted him into doing this. So I think there might be quite hardline lecturers at the college, and perhaps they're like a small coterie. Because you get them at universities, you always get like a small faction.
It's just, how did anyone think that was appropriate? I was reminded recently that at my brother and sister-in-law's wedding, the priest started spouting off about LGBTQ, plus people. It's like, this is a wedding. This is not...
Yeah. Why are you going crazy now? Like, it's a type of celebration,
not politics. It's a commencement speech. It's like, hey, you guys worked really hard. You made it. Good for you. Good luck in what you're doing out there. Go get them. But no, it was like, all right, ladies, I hope you got your MRS degree while you were here, because...
Yeah.
Kick off the shoes and get barefoot and pregnant.
You want to go get wifed up, because I married my middle school sweetheart he was basically talking about, and she was a convert as well, so she wasn't religious before, and she basically converted so she can marry him, and then now she's a. I mean, it's easy to be a stay-at-home mum when your husband is earning millions of dollars.
Right. And I've seen a
Playing
lot
football.
of people online talking about like these are Catholic beliefs, and but it's. I don't think. I mean, they're not at the core a Catholic beliefs. I grew up in a Catholic family. My parents both worked. They both valued education. I went to Catholic school. It was taught that I had women teachers. There were. It was at no point during any of that. I went through the religious sacraments. I have my communion, my first communion, my confirmation. I mean, I've since become a godless heathen, but I went through Catholic schooling, and I was never walked out with the impression that I just need to get pregnant, make a lot of babies, and be taken care of.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one thing to be. I think the main thing that we were taught when I was at Catholic school is to be a present parent. Like, it didn't matter if you're a man or a woman. It was talking about how important the mother is. Like, the mother was central to the family unit, but it wasn't that she couldn't have a job. It's just that don't let the rest of life get in the way of you being a present parent. Like, that comes first. But you still got shit to do. And, like, not everybody can afford to be a stay-at-home wife. So what, you're supposed to live in poverty because you're supposed to stay at home and bash out kids? Like, he had, like, what I found interesting about his speech was thinking about it analytically, there was like some really weird sort of, it's the way that he delivered some of the lines. It was very conversational, and he hid some really warped beliefs in there. Like, which bit is it? Yeah, like about 14 minutes, 30 seconds. He says there's nothing natural about Catholic birth control. And it was a throwaway line that he's just getting in people's heads.
What does that have to do with a university graduation?
Yeah, and he's putting into like these people's minds because of the way he says it. It's like almost like subliminal messaging. Like, you just hear it and it goes in your head. It's like a brainworm. Yeah. A drive-by, non-scientific, idiotic line. And they basically said that if you're a Catholic, you shouldn't have any form of birth control. And
which is amazing to me that a Catholic would be so staunchly a Catholic football player, because I mean, there's a lot in the Bible about honoring the Sabbath and keeping it holy and not doing anything on Sundays, and football is played on Sundays, so he's working on Sundays.
Yeah. And if he's playing, he probably hasn't got time to go to church before the match since he's actually playing. And like that's another disturbing movement I'm seeing at the moment. Again, from a minority of politicians, but they seem to have a lot of power, and they have enough crazy people behind them, like trying to go against things like IVF and saying it's unnatural and it's a horrible way to procreate, and they're linking it to trans people. Like, yeah, like they're shoving it in with like LGBTQ stuff, and they're making it about that, and so they're trying to ban IVF, so it's affecting all of these people.
But IVF and trans those are completely different.
Well, they're trying to say that because they can't procreate, so they're getting a surrogate and infecting her with IVF, and then they're basically borrowing a woman and her womb and renting her, and then they get in. So these degenerates, their words, not mine, these degenerates are then getting access to children that aren't even their own, and then women are turned into cattle.
Okay, but surrogacy has existed long before.
I know. It's insane, isn't it?
Jesus Christ. Speaking of Jesus Christ, could you imagine if he exists, what he's thinking of like, oh, they've all lost the plot. This is not anything to do. Like, even the nuns at the school were like, we're trying to unify our community, unify our nation. And he is just being like, no.
Yeah.
You get in the kitchen, make sure you don't have any gay kids.
Yeah. Well, that was the other thing. He was saying that he was basically against community and communities helping each other. He was saying that is responsibility of the priests, the pastors. They should stop handing out their responsibility onto the community. They should be the ones doing it because they're the voice of God. They're the shepherds, and we shouldn't have to do anything.
So then why did he agree to make that speech?
Exactly.
Fucking hypocrites.
Yeah. And then there's also a bit of anti-Semitic, I think. sort of dog whistle in there, because he was, I think, almost willfully misinterpreting a bill that was put forward in House of Congress, which is that they were adopting, I think, the International Holocaust Convention. I can't remember what the acronym is, of what anti-Semitism is. It is quite an extreme definition of anti-Semitism, but the House of Congress decided to adopt it. And so he's interpreted that as, you're not even allowed to say anymore who killed Jesus. Yeah. So he's basically trying to say that it's the Jews' fault that they killed Jesus. Again, his words, not mine. Please don't tie me to this, people. He's disgusting.
It's this. I still cannot wrap my head around. This was a university.
I know. And he's putting these dog
thought
whistles.
we're going to be inspired, and instead they were preached at.
Yeah.
And lectured, and told to. Oh my God.
Yeah, the scariest bit for me, right, is that it was quite a well-structured speech, right? Because all the way through, he keeps putting in like these undertones in there of stay in your lane was something he kept saying. He kept saying,
while veering so far out of his own lane.
Yeah. You should stay true to your vocation, he kept saying. Stay true to your vocation. So he's talking about him being a footballer, priests being priests. And that's where he started it at. And then he ends up basically saying, that's how he built up to the bit about the women, that you've done all of this, but your vocation is a wife and a mother. And then he basically said, stay in your lane, stay in your vocation, be a wife, be a mother, don't go outside of that, and don't think big things.
If that was, I mean, you shouldn't have to try to force people into their vocation. If you have to force them into it, it wasn't their vocation to begin with.
Yeah. I found the bit of the speech where his culmination of him saying all these scary things. So bearing in mind that the bit I'm gonna play it through the microphone, but by this point, he's been talking about priests and footballers and staying in your lane and staying in your vocation. Fuck the community. The priest is supposed to do the job and all that stuff. And then he says this, speaking specifically to the women in the audience.
Being locked in with your vocation and staying in your lane is going to be the surest way for you to find true happiness and peace in this life. It is essential that we focus on our own state in life, whether that be as a layperson, a priest, or a religious. Ladies and gentlemen of the class of 2024, you are sitting at the edge of the rest of your lives. Each of you has the potential to leave a legacy that transcends yourselves and this era of human existence. In the small ways, by living out your vocation, you will ensure that God's church continues and the world is enlightened by your example. For the ladies present today, congratulations on an amazing accomplishment. You should be proud of all that you have achieved to this point in your young lives. I want to speak directly to you briefly because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. How many of you are sitting here now about to cross this stage and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother.
There you go.
I would love to know what his mom thinks of this. She is an accomplished physicist, and she's hearing her son being like, what the fuck? Like,
yeah. As if it means nothing.
Like, but why does it always have to be one or the other? Why can't a woman have a successful career like his mom did and raise children like she did? You can do both. Why is it only women who can only do the one thing? Men can be fathers and they can have a successful career, but women, no, it's one or the other.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's, I mean, I think the only thing that women, I think, is that when you take on a second thing like having a child, no matter what you're doing, you're going to have to give away some of your time to raise the kid. And so you are going to be behind relative to the other men, like who don't have the same holdbacks. But we just need a bit of equity, to the proper meaning of equity. We need equity to kind of address that balance. But also, just in the same way that my disability holds me back, I'm 5 years behind where I should be. But it's just one of those things you just have to accept and not compare yourself to other people. Focus on your own life and your own accomplishments, you know?
Exactly. And he just is so arrogantly presuming what would make other people happy because he thinks that makes his wife happy. Maybe that's not what she wanted for herself, but maybe she just went along with it. Like there were so many other things, and not like the nuns at that school who co-founded the school. Their vocation wasn't wife and mother. It was developing students to have them go on and accomplish different things. Like that, his mom has likely had some significant accomplishments in her career that he is saying, bah, none of that matters. None of it.
I think you put in, like, I mean, mothers and parents are important, but you're putting them, it's this thing of putting people on pedestals. It makes me really uncomfortable. And
it was this stretch a while ago on TikTok where there were a lot of women talking about the superpower of having babies. Like, it's not, if half the population can do it in the back of a van, it's not a it's not a superpower. It's just how every species propagate, the majority of species propagate themselves for centuries and centuries and centuries. That making it a superpower is the most ridiculous thing ever. It's just
and because there's a lot of people out there that shouldn't be mothers and shouldn't be fathers, you know, and they still get to do it. So I think we just have to be realistic about what it is. And you are bringing life into the world, and that is miraculous in its own right, because the chances of you as an individual existing are so small. Like the vast majority of people that have ever had the chance of existing have died before birth. Like the vast majority. It's a very small percentage of humans that actually not only made it out of the womb and getting born, but then even made it to 1 year. Most of us have died, you know?
Well, I mean, that's why there's always the common, I don't know if this is the same thing in the UK, but I hear women don't tell people they're pregnant until after they get past the 3-month mark.
Yes.
Because miscarriage within those first, I mean, like you sneeze too hard and that's, there it goes.
Yeah.
And the reason that historically people have had massive families is because you knew if you had 10 kids, 3 of them probably wouldn't make it to be 5. So you had to just continue to have kids so that you could have workers on your farm and on your land or whatever.
And the amount of risk that the woman's taking on with that, because she could die. Every single birth can have complications. It doesn't matter how many kids you had, one breech birth and you're dead. You know? And it's and I just think that stuff's undervalued. When they talk about all these things about motherhood and everything, they're focusing on the wrong fucking stuff. Like, it's still a risk now.
So my cousin found out when she was giving birth, she almost died because I don't remember all the specifics of it, but they pretty much warned her against having children. And then she was like, I want another one. I'm taking the risk. But she almost died the first time she had it. And a friend of mine, one of her coworkers, went into the hospital to give birth. While she was in the hospital, she contracted a staph infection and she never made it out of the hospital.
Fuck.
So, like, it's not even just the act of giving birth that's a risk. It's just being in
a hospital.
Just being in a hospital. It's fine.
Yeah.
Whenever someone is in the hospital, I'm like, I'll wait till they get home to go visit them because that's where all the sick people are. And I don't, unless they're imminently going to die, I'll wait till they get home.
And I think that the hypocrisy of these people like this Harrison Butker is that they only care about things like the fetus until it's born. They only care about the women that have husbands and all those things. They don't care about the women that are just kicked out on the street. They don't care about the wives who are beaten up. They don't care about the kids that are abandoned.
And him talking about IVF and surrogacy, I would hazard a guess that the majority of people who use those options are heterosexual couples. So
exactly.
In an effort to punish a small percentage of people, he wants to punish everybody because they shouldn't benefit from it. You can't benefit from it because there's a risk that somebody else will. And even
he
brought up euthanasia as well.
Yeah. He even said that he said it in a really sort of mealy-mouthed way, but he basically said that LGBTQ plus people are degenerates. Like, he was talking about degeneracy, and then and he also equated the month of Pride with the deadly sin of pride. Yeah, and then he said, like, but then, because he was talking about pride and being, believing in God and being a Catholic, and he said, not that month of pride, which is like dedicated to the deadly sin, but he's talking about that God created pride, and that's okay. And I was like, okay, but in your world, pride is pride, and the pride, yeah.
The mental gymnastics of that guy.
Yeah, and people like him always complain about progressives and their mental gymnastics, you know? And I think it's worth mentioning, obviously, because I'm defending the other side a lot, is that I'm not a progressive, I'm not a conservative, you know, I'm just a liberal Democrat, basically. Not a Democrat voter, but like I'm a liberal Democrat by ideology. So it's interesting being in the middle and seeing these two sides do all these things. But like the difference is that one side just wants to live a freer, happier life free from persecution. And then the other side wants to put people down and make them feel shit about themselves and crush all individuality.
Like, we can't just live and let live. Just as long as people aren't hurting themselves or hurting other people, just let them be. It's none of your business.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand the mentality of spending so much of your mental capacity hating on a group that affects you 0%.
Yeah.
Like, people were rallying against gay marriage. It's like, but if you don't believe in gay marriage, don't get gay married. That doesn't affect you. It doesn't have anything to do with you. I love when they talked about the sanctity of marriage when well, it's a Cupid doesn't come from the sky with your marriage. It's a government document you get. But to say the sanctity of marriage when there are TV shows like 90 Day Fiancé and Married at First Sight and The Bachelor, people were getting, I think, Britney Spears was married for a week.
Yeah.
Larry King was married 8 times. There's nothing about this that needs to be religious. You can bring religion into it, but it's not a religious event because atheists get married, Muslims get married, Hindus get married, people outside of the Catholic religion get married all the time. You bring the Catholicism to it, but that doesn't mean it's Catholic.
You can't. I don't think you should be able to force, like, say, a Catholic church to marry people like outside of their belief system, but there's no reason why they can't get a civil marriage or marriage in a different denomination. If
that church, and then marriage, as far as I'm concerned, is a civil right because it is a civil document. You go to a government office to get it. If the Catholic Church or any church doesn't want to marry a gay or lesbian couple, then don't. That's well within your right, but that doesn't mean that they can't get married at all.
And in an ethical and moral society, we will then judge the fuck out of that church for doing that, and nobody should go because it's like, well, you bastards. So, you know, because that's what, you know, this is what I think in terms of consequences, kind of like sidestepping into the conversation here, but there's a lot of things that people could do more if we were more aware of the ethics and morality behind what is happening in our society. Like, there are a lot of things we don't have to participate in if we do feel as strongly as we pretend that we feel or say that we feel.
Pretend that we feel.
Yeah. There's a lot of people out there who, like, I think, like the Just Stop Oil people in our country, like, they're absolutely fucking batshit crazy. They went up to Magna Carta the other day and I think glued their hand to it or something.
I still think those people are a plant to make
they are.
To make the oil people look stupid because they were protesting at an electric car event. They stopped a truck that was full of cooking oil. Like, I think they're just pro-oil people that are put in there to make.
Well, the people themselves that are doing the protesting, they are genuine. Like, they really do feel this way. But it was uncovered that a lot of their funding was coming from this one woman who, I forget her name, but she is really high up in the oil business. And so she was funding them.
Well, like a lot of the studies that came out in the, I think, 60s and 70s about cigarettes were funded by cigarette companies. And a lot of studies on sugar were funded by, like, Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
If you're paying for the study, you can have it say whatever you want.
Well,
have you ever seen the movie Thank You for Smoking?
No, I've got a DVD, but I've never watched it.
You absolutely should.
Yeah, it's supposed to be really good.
It is, and it's kind of that spin because he works for big tobacco, and he's trying to he's that spin doctor about this why tobacco doesn't cause cancer. Everybody's fine. We're all fine.
Well, that's what happens with pharmaceutical products, is that the studies are run by those pharma companies. A lot of these studies are suppressed and they're messed with and they're bad science, and they can make things look like they're efficacious. Sometimes they just change like a compound ingredient when it's about to run out of patent. They'll change an ingredient that has no effect on the product, and then so that they can renew the patent on it. And then it means that like African countries can't get cheap drugs.
They did the same. It's so pervasive with everything. Someone I used to work at a cosmetics company, and every couple of years they would change an ingredient by like 0.001% and then sell it as new and improved and jack up the price when it's really done absolutely nothing. And there are so many companies that, like, I think I saw this documentary, they were comparing like $700 face cream with $7 face cream, and the ingredients were almost identical, and where they were different wasn't enough to actually make. It's not like they found the fountain of youth they were sprinkling in. They were so much the same, but they were just selling the lifestyle. You were selling that you can afford this $700 cream, even though it works exactly the same as something else.
Exactly. And then they were, I think California is trying to bring in a law to stop kids buying anti-aging cream. Yeah, because apparently it's becoming a thing there where these young kids, like they're like 7 or 8 years old, and they're buying anti-aging cream. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and it's become a big enough thing that the local government there, the state level legislator, is having to.
But what's the risk? It's not like it's going to reverse aging and they're going to like boom. Like it's.
I think it's more like just concerns about such a long-term use of some of these chemicals in it, and getting them reliant on it so young, and just like the whole thinking and the whole psychology behind all of that stuff. Because California's got a huge problem with it anyway.
And there is that now. There's a trend of even women in their late teens, early 20s are starting to get preventative cosmetic procedures because they just like, why are we so afraid of aging? I don't understand. I find the most beautiful people in Hollywood, because there's the ones we see are the ones who just let themselves age gracefully.
Yeah, like Helena Bonham Carter, Helen Mirren.
Is stunning. Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah, exactly.
You can always tell. We're going to get to a place where you're not even going to be able to make period movies anymore because everyone's going to look.
We already can't. I was watching a really good show called Medici Masters of Florence, and it was kind of weird about like when they're going through the timelines, and the actress who was playing the wife of one of the Medicis, as her, like, she's quite young in real life, but then as she's aging, they're not aging her character. Like, they're not making her age enough, and so like. And I really don't feel like that was the actress doing that. I feel like that was the company.
Well,
and then
they made that movie, was it Alexander, with Colin Farrell and Angelina Jolie?
Oh, yeah.
Angelina Jolie played his mother, but in real life, like 2 years older than he is. And they didn't even give her not even a crow's foot.
Jesus. I was watching a House episode yesterday, and there was these two actors, and they actually look quite similar. So I was like, oh, I wonder how old they are, because like, you know, like the younger guy was supposed to be like 18, and his dad looks like he's supposed to be in his 50s or something like that. So I looked them up, and then the 18-year-old was actually 34, and the guy playing his dad was only 15 years older than him.
Maybe we did it to ourselves by having 30-year-olds play teenagers. Everyone forgot what a teenager was supposed to look like.
Yeah.
They did Beverly Hills 90210. One of the actresses was, I think, 35, and she looked 35. Like, not to say that she looked old, but she would fit in as a teacher, not as a student. But
yeah. It's so weird. Talking of weird shit, though, there was that portrait of
there it is. It looks like, I understand. It looks like the beginning of a horror movie.
Yeah. It's like a Dorian Gray thing, isn't it?
Yeah, he looks like he's in hell. Have you ever seen the second Ghostbusters movie where this painting is? Yeah,
yes.
That finds me up.
Oh my god, it so does. And then, so I also had an idea about this that, so I quite like all the reds, and like as a portrait on its own, I quite like it in that sense. If it wasn't the king, but as a portrait of the king, it looks a bit too bizarre. And so I was thinking, it looks like with all the reds, and like the only thing that's not red is his face. And there's supposed to be something. I think I was reading an article of something about identity and where he stands in his role and all that stuff. So I was wondering if maybe, because there's the butterfly, that he's basically the butterfly is being the king, and he's come to it quite late in life. And then, like a butterfly, he has no choice but to go through the stages: the caterpillar, the chrysalis, and the butterfly.
Interesting.
And then with all of the red just kind of swallowing him up, that's basically the idea of being royalty, and that he has no choice in it, swallowing up, and there's not much of him left. It's like all the royalty has sucked him in.
That's a very interesting theory, because it looks like if we found a painting of that now, of a king from 200 or 300 years ago, you would see that painting and assume he was an evil king.
Yeah, right. Yeah. He looks like he's in hell on fire. It's like something out of Diablo.
As well be Vlad the Impaler.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And he's even got his podgy fingers as well. He's got big fat sausage fingers.
And he does. I mean, I know when I've seen portraits of royalty in the past, they have looked very, stoic and distinguished, where he kind of looks sad a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. He seems a bit just kind of, I don't know, a bit bummed out at being king. Yeah. Because I think he was expected to be king a long time ago, probably about 15, 20 years ago, as his mum was getting older.
Well, and to be 127 years old.
Yeah. And she's just around forever. There was talks of her abdicating a while ago, and that never happened. She just held on for grim death. And I mean, she was good at the job, right? I hate monarchy. I hate the idea that we've got a constitutional monarchy sort of thing. It's a bit weird. But it's I think it's a very outdated thing, and we give them way too much money. I'm really not a fan of it. No, I fucking hate it.
I never really understood the obsession with it, for lack of a better word. Like, even people here were during the royal weddings, whether it was Princess Diana, people had commemorative Princess Diana plates, and they watched the wedding. They watched Harry and Meghan get married. They watched. I just don't understand the draw or the appeal of it.
Especially for one of our colonies as well. Like, why do you guys love it? I thought you'd want to distance yourselves. Do what America did.
Like, people woke up. I think they woke up at like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning to watch these to watch the weddings. And I was like, really? You don't even know them. Like, you.
Yeah. And it's I very much I'm a Republican in that sense. I want to get rid of our parliament. I want to install a republic, get rid of the monarchy. But, I'm a very bad Brit.
Are you a minority, or are there a lot of people who feel the same way?
Very much the minority. I think people want change. They're just not sure what change they want, and they're not educated about it either. Because our school doesn't do a very good job of educating people about things like civics and governance. So people don't really know how our government works and everything, and it's not their fault. Like, it's just like you wouldn't even. It's one of those things that you don't even know that the question exists, or that the notion that things could be different exists, because it's like with British people, we're very apathetic. I mean, I am as well about a lot of stuff. Like, we're just resigned, and especially if you're Welsh. They're like, oh, things are shit. It's always been shit. It's always going to be shit. And then it takes a lot to rile us up and get us to do something about it. But that's why we ended up having our civil war against the monarchy and having getting more power for our parliament. We did that way before the rest of Europe did. Europe had all their revolutions in 1848. And I can't remember when we had ours. Like, we had 2 civil wars. But I don't know if you ever heard of Oliver Cromwell, the man who banned Christmas.
Yes.
Yeah. He was quite a hated man. That when he died, they played football with his head outside of Parliament. Yeah,
that's dark.
Yeah. The Irish hate him as well because he was one of the people that caused a lot of atrocities over in Ireland, trying to subjugate the Irish. So, yeah, it was. We had a lot of ups and downs, but like to get the British riled up, it does take a lot. But when we do stand up, shit gets bad really quick. But but I think it's just that it's always been like the kind of way that you sort of doff your cap to authority and you obey the officer class and do what you're told. And again,
path of least resistance.
Yeah, and like we basically ran an entire empire on it. So it's, I don't know. It's kind of it's sad that that's the way things are, but it's not any person's fault that it's like that because you can't even think of they got it to the stage where you can't even think of the question to ask. You can't even think of where to look so that things can be different. There's all the stuff like George Orwell wrote about in 1984, but we do it with a veneer of politeness, and it's fucking awful.
On that note.
Yeah. Oh, mate. Oh, God. It's so weird. I just find it so strange that the king can actually shut down things going on in Parliament, like if he wanted to. Like he could just walk in and go, no, that's not happening. You're not doing it. Like if we declare war, the king has to agree to it. So like when we invaded Iraq in Gulf War II, they had to ask the Queen if they could do it. Like so, like in
that would have been like, oh, all right, that's it.
Yeah, yeah, basically. And it's kind of, but there's like this weird truce between the royal family and Parliament. That if Parliament don't do certain things, I don't know what those things are. My partner knows way more about it than I do. But like if Parliament doesn't rock the boat too much, then the royal family won't step in. And that's why people like Prince Andrew will never get investigated. Nothing will ever happen to him. Because they just keep him out of, he's like, I'm trying to think of the equivalent, but they'll just keep him in the tower locked away. Nobody will see him,
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Do you think like what will it take for it to change?
I don't know, because if you do it so slowly, like if you make things bad really slowly, then people don't realize it's happening. And up until I say a few years ago, like just before COVID, up until 2019, people didn't realize how bad it was getting, like on a critical mass scale. But it's only been since sort of 2020 that people have realized how corrupt our government is now. And because they do things quicker than previous governments, they do it more blatantly. They're more openly corrupt. Then people are getting more pissed off. But I think that it's about kind of like getting it to the critical mass quick enough for something to happen. And I'm not actually sure what that would take.
Because you're right. When it does happen slowly, it just becomes the status quo. It's like, I know you probably didn't watch The Office, the American version of The Office, but there was one of the we did. Okay, so there was one practical joke that Jim played on Dwight where every day he would put a nickel into his phone handset.
Yes.
He would get accustomed to the weight, and then one day he took all the nickels off, and Dwight backed himself.
That was one of the best ones. I fucking love that.
And they just put a nickel in every day, and then okay, it's always been this heavy, I guess.
Yeah, exactly that. It's like that. You put a frog in a pot of water that's heating up, and then it will just cook, and won't even realize it's happening.
Or frog.
Yeah, and that's what happens to us. And then I kind of feel like Boris and all his buddies kind of ruined it for him and his corrupt fellows because they did it too quick.
It's a virtue.
Well, it's kind of like the thing is that like it's been going on in the States for decades as well. Like there's stuff going on with Trump. The thing that pisses me off so much about it isn't that they're getting Trump done, because like he deserves everything he's gonna get. But it's just that, but what about the rest of them? They all do everything Trump does. He just does it in a really sort of brash, arrogant way. and he's more stupid about it. But then, you know, you got Nancy Pelosi doing her insider trading, and most of the other senators up to their shenanigans. But like nothing happens with them. They've all done the same fucking crimes.
But it's the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. He's just the squeakiest.
Yeah.
And you can manage it quietly, and they can kind of go their own way. But he's just been so brash and aggressive, and almost dare to come and get me. And then, okay, we will.
Yeah. And I hope he goes down for what he's done. I really do.
I was on Friday night, and there was a guy in the restaurant we were at wearing a Make America Great Again hat. I was like,
in Canada. Why?
I don't know. Maybe he was visiting from the U.S. I don't know, but it was a double.
It's a bit of a weird statement to make, isn't it? Yeah. Maybe it was a joke hat and you just didn't read it properly. Maybe it said something else. And it's kind of the people who tend to kind of support these movements. Like, I can kind of understand how they get involved in it, because you're so angry and frustrated and you want things to change, kind of like I was saying before about what's happening here. And there are a lot of people that get involved in these fringe movements because they just want stuff to change. And it's like, right, they're angry at people too. We're angry at the same people. I don't care what you're saying. I just want things to change, and you look like you can do it. So fuck it. Yeah, let's do it. And then MAGA basically got that critical mass going, and they're able to get a guy in the White House with it, just by being reactionary. But yeah.
And I think everybody wants there to be change, but they don't want to have to be the agents of change.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Yeah. I don't even know like what I would do to kind of start doing change. I had one of the local councillors knock on my door about a month ago, and she was saying, like, she's a Labour councillor. I'm not going to say who it is, because obviously then people find out where I live. But she was like, we cared about the same stuff. And I was like, I'm not a Labour voter, but I'd never vote Tory. But then she was saying that, like, I should get in contact with her and, like, talk to her about it. And then we'd go for a coffee or something. She's like, I could talk for hours about this. But yeah, so that's maybe that's like a grassroots way to get involved. Like, because even if like I don't want to join the Labour Party, I can still help them out in my area because they're the dominant party and we're pissed off about the same things. So
you find people who are pissed off about the same things and want to approach it in the same way, because there are others who are a bit more extreme or a bit more lackadaisical and expecting everybody else to be the change.
Yeah. I mean, like, one of the things that we bonded over was that the Labour Party leaders, this guy called Keir Starmer. This is for all those Canadians and Americans listening who don't know who he is. So he leads the opposition, and by trade, he's an international human rights lawyer, right? And so when Israel rolled into Gaza and like 10,000 civilians died or something, and he didn't say anything about it. Yeah.
And has he been asked why he didn't say anything about it? Because you think that would be in house.
Yeah, he just avoids it. It just does the typical politician thing. And it's just like, even if you're not going to come down on any side, because like it is a complicated issue, right? He could at least say something about the civilian losses. Yeah. Without coming down on, like, because I personally think Hamas has to go, but then Israel's like heavy-handed, and then what they're doing is killing too many civilians, so maybe they should do it a different way. And I feel quite strongly about that. But then, but he doesn't even fucking say anything. International human rights lawyer.
I mean, if anyone's qualified to talk about it would be him.
Yeah, and there's like questions about, is it genocide or is it not genocide? He could be on all the podcasts talking about that.
But that may alienate some of his voters, and you don't want to do that.
Yeah. The funny thing is that what I personally find really funny about it, I guess in a dark way, is that Britain headed up the change of the genocide law, or the definition of genocide for the UN, we headed up that change because of Myanmar and what they were doing to their own people. And then so we kind of changed the definition so that we could go after the people of Myanmar. And then that was the definition being used, I think, quite correctly in Palestine. And then we've got our own human rights lawyer who isn't saying anything about it. And it's like, but we made that change in definition.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Can't force him to talk about it.
Yeah.
Unless Project Watermelon comes after him next.
Could you imagine him this is the thing. It's like, if these people really gave a shit, they would be doing their little missions against people that can actually affect change.
Exactly.
Who aren't.
Right people, not makeup artists, storytellers.
Yeah, exactly. People that are just doing their own stuff on there. You know, maybe go after the international human rights lawyer who is the opposition leader who should be campaigning about it. All of his campaigning so far, because we've got the elections probably at the end of this year, and he's basically he's targeting people who are probably people who want to leave voting Tories, and he's trying to get them to come over and vote for Labour, but he's just completely neglecting all the progressives, all the left-wing people, all the centrists, and he's just trying to go after the right-wing voters.
Why? Are they a bigger group, or are they a more...
Nah. He's just an idiot. I think he's got a really bad group of people who are advising him. He'll still win the election, but it's just he's targeting the wrong people. There's going to be no faith in his government because of it. Yeah. But it's just like all the progressives and the lefties are all just like really livid. I'm a centrist and I'm pissed off with him. So he's got no hope. Well, he does have a hope. He's going to win just because the Tories are really rubbish. But anyway, I'll stop talking politics.
You're such a boomers.
Yeah. No, we don't have time.
Oh.
We'll bring it up next time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah, fate of black bitch.
Oh.
Fuck nuts.